Hello, clever engineers! I wanted to thank everyone who subscribed for helping to grow the channel. Please continue to like and subscribe. This video is going to finish out the bug out bag, and before we get started, I wanted to talk about a few things. First, I want to reiterate what a bug out bag is and isn't. I explained it in more detail in part 2, but wanted to repeat that it's a non-combat centric solution where you have the supplies that you need to survive for 72 hours. There are all sorts of other solutions like weapons packs, gear stored in shelters at safe locations, or large bins that have to be transported by SUV, which will have everything you need for a family for a week. But none of those are bug out bags. I've also tried to explain all of my choices and the reasons behind them. I completely understand that what works for me may not work for you. You can disagree with my choices, but if you do, there should be an actual reason. And saying that it's been done a certain way for a certain number of years is not an actual reason. This channel is called Clever Engineering, and as a professional system engineer, I solve problems for a living, often by finding clever, non-traditional ways to do things, and this is the same philosophy that applies to this bag. My concept of survival may also be a little non-traditional. I mentioned BlackBerry, Kodak, and Radio Shack in part 2, and they all still exist in some form. But simply existing isn't quite the same as surviving, so that's why I made some of the choices I did, like going heavy on staying hydrated and fed. I also had a viewer correctly point out that knowledge is the lightest and most powerful tool that you can carry, and I want to add common sense to that toolkit. Everyone should carry and use these regularly, emergency or not. Also, none of the items in my videos were sponsored or sent to me. Everything on my channel was bought with my own money after performing my own research. Finally, everything in my bag is there for a reason. It's based on 5 concepts as well as 14 survival categories. I expanded the original 10 categories and added 4 more, so if you missed my first 2 bug out videos, they'll have all the items in the categories that I'm not covering today. So with all that said, let's get into it. The first category I'm going to talk about today is cut care and first aid. I think that every bug out needs a comprehensive IFAK, or individual first aid kit. I transferred most of the items from this J&J kit. Now this is a solid jumping off point, and everything in here except for the scissors is definitely good quality. So you can rely on it in an emergency, but this is not close to complete in a bug out scenario. Unfortunately, like most pre-made kits, it goes really heavy on bandages because they count each bandage as a separate item, so it can be marketed as having a huge number of items. Also, if you look at this rigid case and insert, there's a lot of wasted space. I got this soft case from Amazon about 6 months ago, and I'll link it in the description. It has about the same volume as the J&J case, but you can see that it holds way more. The first thing I have in here is a Swat-T Tourniquet. Hopefully you won't need to use one of these, but this is really a must-have for a bag like this, so get one and learn how it works. Next, we have some wipes. These are a bunch of antiseptic cleaning wipes, and up here we have some small alcohol wipes. These are different sized gauze pads, a sealed sterile gauze roll, and some butterfly closures. Now I want to talk about a part of first aid that's often overlooked, and I say that literally, and that's eye care. So I have 2 different eye washes and some eye pads, because if you get something in your eye, or if you're in a very smoky area, if that's not addressed, everything else goes out the window. Now we'll move on to the rear compartment, and first we have some Band-Aids. These are from the J&J kit, and they're an assortment of sizes. I have less than half of the ones that came in that kit, but remember, this is a 72-hour bag, so that is definitely an appropriate amount. Next, I'll talk about this Bleedstop powder. I know some bug out bags and EDC pouches use super glue to close wounds. I use this powder regularly, and I even have a small tube of Bleedstop in my EDC pouch, as well as some tiny packets in this IFAK that I'll show you in a minute, because it's simply a better and more effective solution than super glue. The last thing in this rear compartment is this instant cold pack. Now the last thing that we have on the right side is this medical tape, and you would use that with your gauze pads, or you can even stick a little bit on a Band-Aid just to keep it from unraveling. Now we'll move on to the center compartment. First thing here is an Israeli bandage. This basically combines the applications of a large non-stick sterile pad, a tourniquet, a sling, and a clip so it doesn't unravel. Next, we have 6 nitrile gloves. These are much thicker and stronger than latex, and because they don't tear easily, they can often be reused. If you want to maintain some degree of a clean and sterile environment, you can wipe them down with one of the wipes I just showed you, or with a larger Purell wipe that I'll show you a little later. Next, we have some burn pads and a blister kit. The blister kit came in a bulky plastic package, so I transferred it into a 4mm zip-top bag and also added a bunch of pieces of blister prevention tape. The final compartment in our IFAK is going to contain some medicines and ointments. So first, we have this Benadryl cream, and we have Neosporin plus pain cream, a couple of packets of Tylenol, and those were all transferred from the J&J kit. We've also got these very small Bleedstop packets if you have a small wound that doesn't justify opening one of the big ones. We have Benadryl tablets, Imodium antidiarrheal tablets, and then we have some packets that I made in a food saver. So we have these cough gels, caffeine, and ibuprofen. And I'm going to link to the video where I show you how to make these packets that are going to be completely sealed, impervious to the elements, to water if your bag gets wet, and always dependable when you need them. Now, the last thing that we have in here is this Uncle Bill's Sliver gripper. And this is a very compact yet very effective tweezer that's going to help you if you get a splinter, because that will really slow you down if you don't address it. Our last 4 first aid items live outside the IFAK. So we have these trauma shears, as well as a Dermasafe knife, both of which I discussed in part 1. This right here is a 3M rubberized tape, and it is non-adhesive, very useful for sprains, and also to keep gauze on a joint that's always in motion. Our last first aid item is this Dermoplast Spray, and it has benzocaine and menthol to relieve pain, regular burns, sunburn, and itch. Now we'll move on to the signaling and communication section. I'm only going to cover signaling here because I went over all the communication gear in part 2. First signaling item, and a bug out must-have, is cash. Here's $200 in $20 bills. In an emergency, no matter which country you're in, I think you'll have more flexibility by having your money in medium denomination bills instead of high denomination ones. This is a Canadian-made Fox 40 P-less whistle.
Fox Force 5.
What?
Fox Force 5.
Pretty clear what it's for, and it's super loud and reliable. Here's a signaling mirror. I left the instructions just in case, and of course you can always use it as a regular mirror. This is a Rite in the Rain notebook and pen. As the name implies, you can write on it while it's wet, and the paper won't dissolve if you leave a note for yourself or for somebody else and a storm hits. I also added a mechanical pencil, so you don't need to sharpen it if the point breaks, and a permanent marker. I keep all of these in this rugged pouch, which is completely opaque, so there's no hint that there's money inside. To finish out the signaling items, I brought one of the flashlights from part 1 back out. All 3 of my flashlights have a mode where they flash, and the blanket tarp combo I showed in part 2 makes a huge signaling device because it's brightly colored on one side and reflective on the other side. Now, let's get into calories and food. I completely understand that we can stay alive for 3 weeks without food, but if you're expending calories moving around in a stressful environment, I think it's going to be pretty difficult both physically and mentally to focus on actually surviving after 1 or 2 days without food, so forget about 3 weeks. I know this takes up a pretty good amount of space that could possibly be used for a sleeping bag or other items. But just like with all the water-related solutions I showed in part 2, I think that staying hydrated and fed is really important. Your knowledge and common sense are the most important tools to carry with you, and if you're focused on suppressing your hunger, it's going to be pretty difficult to focus on anything else. So what I have here is an MRE, which is a full day of food. For those of you who don't know what these are, they're U.S. military rations, and they come with a flameless ration heater. You don't need clean water to prepare them because MRE is meal ready to eat. I also have these freeze-dried meals which do require clean water. There are 2 breakfasts and 4 lunch or dinner meals, as well as some supplemental items like coffee, tea, drink mixes, and seasonings. Those are in an oversized zip-top bag, and you can also use the bag for other purposes. You would use the stoves that I showed in part 1 and the containers I showed in part 2 to prepare the meals, along with these utensils. The titanium spork with the long handle won't melt and won't burn you if you stir your food while it's cooking. I explained in part 1 why I don't have a multi-tool. Instead, I have this very effective and compact P51 can opener and a little bottle cap opener. Even though none of the food here comes in cans or bottles, these are pretty important to have in your bug out for things that you might come across on your way. Now, if you can't stop to prepare anything at all, I have 3 of these Millennium Long Life 400 calorie bars. They're not snack bars. The first ingredients are sugar, flour, and oil, but they'll definitely do in a pinch. They also aren't thirst-provoking, come in rugged packaging, and have a long shelf life that's between 5 and 6 years. I have this assortment of food because I explained in my other videos that I want to avoid the wrong kind of redundancy. So we have different types of food options that can be used in different scenarios. You can also easily stretch these from 72 hours to 4 or 5 days, which you simply can't do if your bag has much more limited food or no food at all. I also get that you can pack a bunch of emergency bars and nothing else. That will definitely save space on containers, water solutions, and the food itself. However, I've eaten one here and there, and it's certainly filling, but I don't think it's good for your morale, your focus, or your stomach to have these bars as your one and only source for calories for days on end. Finally, if you have an opportunity to fish near a clean stream or lake, I have a U.S. military speed hook fishing kit, a yo-yo reel, as well as a sinking bait. I've done plenty of fishing since I was a kid, and while I admit I've never done it without an actual fishing rod, this would be a nice way to supplement your food, and it takes up very little space and weight. The last category I'm going to talk about is care for health and hygiene. First, we have several kinds of wipes. These are dude wipes to help clean yourself when you need a bathroom break. They work way better than toilet paper, and I use them all the time, even when there's no emergency. These Clean Freak body size wipes won't take the place of a shower, but will definitely help if a shower is not available. These Grease Monkey wipes will do a great job cleaning your hands without water if you get grease, ink, or hard to remove dirt on them. We've also got some camp soap, which needs very little water, and a little hotel soap if you do have a good water supply. As far as towels, in addition to the large compressed towels that I showed in my other videos, we have a quick-drying, absorbent microfiber towel. Here's a 3-ounce bottle of SPF 50 waterproof sunscreen. And this is a regular toothbrush that I cut in half because it works way better than any collapsible or folding travel toothbrush that I've tried. I've also got some travel-sized toothpaste, deodorant, and lip balm with SPF. Now this is a diamond-coated nail file. It's got coarse and fine sides, and it's more useful than a nail clipper because this rugged metal file can also be used for filing things that aren't your nails in a way that a disposable cardboard-backed one just can't do. For our bug-out bug spray, I took some 30% DEET from a big container of Benz that I use when I go hiking, and I filled up that 1 ounce or 30 milliliter spray bottle. Unfortunately, good quality bug spray only comes pre-filled in either much larger or much smaller containers, so for the 72-hour bag, I ended up getting this right-size spray bottle that I keep in the little inner bag just in case it leaks. We've also got some Purell wipes, and these will clean and sanitize your hands and surfaces. There are a bunch of them, and they're larger than the ones in the IFAC. They're not here for first aid, so that's why I'm talking about them now. These are potassium iodide tablets. While radiation emergencies are very unlikely, they have actually happened, while EMPs have not. That's why I thought it made sense to add the tablets, especially considering the negligible size and weight. Finally, we have our PPE. These are super light and comfortable 3M safety goggles. They have silicone nose pads, are made from flexible materials, and cost under $6 US. I have probably 10 of them in various bags, vehicles, and toolkits, and I explained in the first aid section that if you get something in your eye, everything else goes out the window. We've also got some regular masks, some valved N95 masks, and some earplugs. And that does it for the health and hygiene section. Now that I've covered all of the items in the bag, I wanted to talk a little bit about the weight, which is definitely a major consideration. The guideline is to have the bag come in at 15 to 25% of your body weight, depending on fitness level. I'm a relatively fit 177 pounds, or 80.3 kilograms, and the bag, with everything in it, weighs 33 pounds, or 15 kilograms, which is less than 19% of my weight. So this is at the optimal end of the guidelines. I'm sorry to disappoint some of the survival gurus that were thinking it would come in at over 40 pounds, but I'm always trying to find better solutions, and some of the items like the tiny stoves and titanium cookware weigh a lot less than their old school counterparts. I know that I can add a sleeping pad and sleeping bag and still come in at a very reasonable weight, but there's no room for them inside the bag, and clipping them to the outside will make the bag a little unwieldy if I'm on the move across long distances and uneven terrain. As far as packing the bag, it's pretty important to put your heavier items towards the back and middle. I'm going to drop a link in the description to a very useful hiking site. The site is actually from the same company that makes the lever action water filter I talked about in part 2. One example of how I pack the bag is that I put all the freeze-dried food in the front because I don't want it acting as a lever to make the bag feel heavier than it is. I also talked about these 4mm zip-top bags a few times. You can actually make them smaller in a food saver, and I showed how to do that in my How to Protect and Seal Almost Anything video, which is the same video where I explained how to seal the compressed towels and how to make the little packets of medicine. These bags with an actual zipper are also super useful for both organizing and helping to protect your items. I often add a silica gel packet to absorb some moisture. They're not waterproof, but they also don't add bulk. Now, if you need to cross a deep stream or a shallow lake, you can just use the heavy-duty contractor bag I showed in part 2 to quickly seal the entire bug-out bag. I'll add links in the description to the 4mm bags, the zip-top bags, and the silica gel. At the beginning of the video, I mentioned what some people might do to take care of their family in a bug-out situation. Here's a quick look at a supplemental bag that family members will carry. I'm going to show you the contents in a future video. So, we're pretty much at the end of the series, and I wanted to close by reviewing a few things that I explained in all 3 bug-out videos. First, I wanted to repeat that I'm a professional system engineer, and I use the same thought process with this bag that I use for my work. At the beginning of my career, I knew that a solution another engineer was proposing was wrong. I told this to him, as well as to management, and explained why. His response, with no explanation attached, was that he had over 20 years of experience, while I had 2. The company ended up doing it his way. It didn't work, and they had to redo it my way, which worked. A few weeks later, he was no longer with the company. Today, I have over 20 years of experience, but I don't use it as a crutch or as an I told you so, and will always explain my reasons. An out-of-the-box solution that I may think is super clever and works better for me can still mean that a traditional or different solution may work better for you. I try to make this series as informative as possible and try to explain the reasoning behind all of my items and choices. I encourage every viewer to use that information, along with knowledge, common sense, and even information from other YouTube creators that don't agree with me, to figure out your customized bug-out solution. So that does it for this video and series. Please like and subscribe. Clever Engineer,